And now it's time to preview an upcoming game with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at another Kickstarter preview game. This time we're going to take a look at Space Junk by Lamplight Games. Now this is a game for 2 to 6 players that's going to take 90 to 120 minutes according to the box. I found it plays a little bit faster than that, especially once you get going, but it's a game in which each player represents a contestant in a game show. And this game show is about sending this contestant into space with a remedial or a very basic spaceship and allowing them to build it up and make it better with junk they find orbiting around the planet. With that ship, they're going to try and orbit the planet to shoot other players down and to, of course, collect more junk that's going to be worth victory points at the end of the game. Real quick, why don't we take a look at what you're going to get inside of this box, and a quick reminder that these are prototype quality components, not final quality components, so they will represent the function of what's in the game, but maybe not the final form. After we've taken a look at what you get inside the box, we'll see how the game plays, and then at the end I'll come back here and sum it all up for you. Here you can see the board for Space Junk all set up for a 4-player game. Now, Space Junk is a game in which each player represents a contestant in some type of game show where each player is out in space trying to build and maintain a ship out of junk floating around the planet, while at the same time trying to orbit the planet and shoot other players down to prevent them from doing the same thing. Each player is going to be represented by a character card and a ship, and each player's character card will have 3 statistics: a move, an attack, and a search. In this case, 5, 4, and 2. Those stats are placed out higher on their ship marked by these crystals, 5, 4, and 2 for move, attack, and search respectively. In addition, you'll see that the ship has several places for pieces of junk, items that you can add to your ship to modify their values. We have the fuselage space here, which you can place a card in when you get one in order to modify all 3 of your stats based on what that card says. So for example, here we have a kiss, which is a clear reference to Peter Pan in the thimble that it shows on here. It has a movement of 1, an attack of 2, and a search of 0. If we were to place this into our fuselage at some point during the game, we would increase our movement by 1, our attack by 2, and our search by 0, modifying what we have throughout the game. Now, we don't have that yet, so let's move it back. But when you place something in there, you get all 3 statistics. If you were to place it into the move, attack, or search areas, it would give you only the corresponding stats. So placing this here would give us +1 movement. Whereas if we placed it in our attack, we'd get +2 attack. With these ships, each player is trying to navigate around the planet, and they're going to do so in either fast, medium, or slow speed. Now, the reason you might want to change speeds is because at each different speed you can pick up different amounts of space junk on your turn to add to your ship, and that junk can theoretically be worth victory points. For example, the kiss I showed you is worth 2 if you have it anywhere on your ship at the end of the game. So, each player can go at fast, medium, or slow speed in order to pick up more or less junk, but do more or fewer laps. Each of these circles here is a different speed, so the inner one is the fastest speed. It has the fewest spaces, so you'll be able to go around the planet faster than players who are going at a different speed. This one has 4 spots, so any movement of at least 4 is going to move you 1 lap around, granting you 5 points, as each lap is worth 5 points. The next ring out has 8 spaces. It's a little bit slower, but you can pick up more junk. The inner ring has a limitation of a maximum of 3 pieces of junk picked up on a turn, while the second ring out has a maximum of 6, twice as much. The outer ring has 16 spaces. You move much slower around the planet, but you can pick up a maximum of 9 pieces of space junk on each turn. So that's going to be good for you if you want to get a lot of points by carrying a lot of cargo. Each turn is divided into the same phases as you have stats: move, attack, and search. So there are going to be 6 turns in the game, each one of those divided into those 3 phases. First is movement, and each player in turn order will get to move. How this is going to work is you're going to check your current movement value, which in this case is 5 for Kit Vicious. What she can do is she can move 5 spaces, but also important to note is your search value of 2. I can pick up 2 pieces of space junk on this turn. Well, I'm not limited by the inner circle because the inner circle limits me to 3, and I can only pick up 2. So, it's best for me to maintain here and move 5 spaces, which I will do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Moving these 5 spaces will grant me 5 victory points, as I did at least 1 complete lap around the world here, so I've moved my marker up to 5 victory points on the board. After I have moved, I'm going to pass the turn on to the next player, and that player is going to move on their own. So let's say the next player is Mr. Smith here, with a movement of 3, an attack of 4, and a search of 3. Since he's also not limited by the 3 restriction on the center, he's best to stay here. So he's going to go ahead and move 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. He didn't do a full lap, so he gets no points, but he is going to be able to search later. And once he does cross that on his next turn, perhaps, that start line, he's going to get his points. So, he moves and stays on the inner circle to get the most out of his search. The next player, the orange player, has a movement of 3, an attack of 7, so he's quite the attacker, and a search of 2. Now, he is also going to stay on the inside, so we'll go ahead and say that orange is going to move 3, 1, 2, 3, and his search will be a 2 later, so he's not limited by the inside as well. An interesting scenario comes up here, however, and this wouldn't normally happen on the first turn, but on future turns you can have scenarios where 2 players end in the same space and have what's called a ram. Now, what this allows is that the player moving in this case the orange player, is able to ram the ship of the other player. The reason they would do this is that players can have equipment on their ships, and when you ram into somebody, you increase the likelihood, or create the scenario, where you can potentially switch items with them or steal items from them. What's going to happen is that each player involved in the ramming will roll a d6. The player who's moving in gets to add 1 to their roll, but the other player may have ways of adding to the roll for themselves. For example, if it were the green player gets to add +1 to all of their rolls because that's the special ability of Kid Vicious. She's a stunt car driver, and she gets to add +1 to all of her ramming rolls. In addition, there are certain pieces of equipment, for example this Christmas tree here, that when equipped to your ship will give you a bonus to ramming. It's down here in the right hand corner, represented by this R in the spaceship, gives you a +1 to all ramming rolls. In this case, neither player has a bonus, so it's going to be a d6 roll +1 for the player moving in, versus a d6 roll for red. So each player, orange and then red, would roll. In this case, they would tie. 5 + 1 is 6, and 6 is 6 on its own. So nothing would happen. But for example, if the orange player with their 6 had beaten a 2, they would get to take any one piece of equipment from their opponent's ship, aside from the fuselage, and add it to the same type of space on their own ship, a movement, attack, or search space. If they were unable to do so, they could simply take that piece of equipment and throw it in their cargo for victory points at the end of the game. After that was resolved, our last player would move, and they have a movement of 3, but a search of 4. Now, a movement of 3 will not get them all the way around the board here. It would end them in the same space as red and orange, but they wouldn't get any victory points. In addition, their search of 4 is limited by the slowest speed, which is a maximum of 3 pieces of junk to pick up. So maybe they decide to move out to the next slowest speed. Now, if they had already been ahead, for example, if they'd been here and moved to the next slowest speed, they would move to the furthest back space at that speed. But since we're at the start of the game, they're simply going to move to the next outer circle and move 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, they move 3. But they're going to be able to search for all 4 pieces of their junk when we come around to the search phase. After everyone has completed their movement, we're going to move on to the attacking phase. And in turn order, everyone has the chance to attack one other player. Now, attacking works based on a range system, a d6 system, and then the attack values of each of your players' actual statistics. So this player has an attack of 4. When we make an attack, we choose which player we're going to attack. So we'll say the green player decides to attack the purple player here. The reason you attack is to try and damage components that are on your other player's ships, plus attacking is worth victory points. For every hit you manage to score, you'll get 3 victory points. So it's good to score hits. Now, when I shoot, I'm going to count the range. The range to this player is 1, 2 or 1, 2. It's always the shortest range possible, and it's always going to be based on a grid system, with each space being part of that grid. So you count the shortest distance possible, being 2 to the purple player. I'm going to then go ahead and check my attack value, which is 4, and I'm going to roll a d6 and add it to that value. In this case, I rolled a 9. I'll take that value and subtract the range. Minus 2 is 7, and then I'm going to divide that number by 5. So for each 5 points of value you have, for each 5 pips you show, you're essentially going to go ahead and you're going to get 3 victory points. That means if you rolled a 10, you'd get 6 victory points. If you rolled a 15 after modification, you'd get 9 victory points. In this case, we rolled a 7, which is only going to grant us 3. So the green player would move up 3 points. In addition to this, since they scored 1 hit, or they have a total of 5 pips rounded down, they're going to go ahead and they're going to roll 1d6. This value is going to correspond to a location on the opponent's ship. For example, if our player had something right there in this spot, the 4 would correspond to that item. What's going to happen in this case is that item gets damaged, and it will be turned to the side to show that it's damaged and will go away during the search phase. It keeps going through this own phase and contributes to the search phase and the attack phase, but once the search phase begins and everyone draws additional cards, it will go away so that it doesn't contribute to future turns. So in that example, we can pretend that purple hit the green player, and we'll say that purple got 3 points. Now what happens here is green's armadillo is now damaged from their attack location and will contribute to this round's attack but won't contribute to the next round's attack because it'll be gone. After everyone has had a chance to make attacks and score victory points based on that, the higher the attack value, of course, the more victory points you can potentially score, we will move on to the searching phase. And what each player is going to do is they're going to check and see what their search value is, check and make sure that search value is not limited by their position on the board, and then draw that many junk cards that they can potentially add to their ship. So green would be first, and they have a search of 2. They would draw the top 2 cards of the search deck, and they'd take a look at them. For example, we have a Christmas tree. It adds 1 to every stat. Maybe that's a good one to put in the fuselage, and we'll give them a 1 bonus to all of their stats on the board. In addition, they have a kiss, which has a movement of 1 and an attack of 2. So maybe they decide to put that into their attack region, giving them 2 more bonus. Now they have a 7 attack that will modify their die roll in the next round, perhaps giving them a better chance of scoring over a 10 and scoring 6 points instead of the 3. Their armadillo that was damaged in the previous round gets discarded into the space junk pile. There are certain times where you can search through this, and other times when this will form the new draw deck if the previous deck runs out. When you place these cards, you are able to place any cards you pick up into any slot you would like. In addition, you can swap them with cards that are previously there, and then any extras you can place in your cargo hold. Things in your cargo hold are safe from being taken either during ramming attempts or from being damaged during attacks, and will provide victory points at the end of the game. In addition, if you have equipment here that you would like to save for later, maybe you found a really good card that you don't need right now, you're focusing on movement instead of attack, you can place it there to keep it safe for a while. But later, when you pick up new cards during a search attempt, you can add anything from your cargo hold out to the components of your ship in order to make it better if you've been saving it for a specific reason. After everyone has completed their ability to search and add cards to their ship, we'll move on to the next round. The first player marker will pass to the next player. We'll go on to round 2 and we'll repeat the same steps. First, movement, deciding which one of these circles we'd like to move around. If this player decides they want to go even slower, they would move backwards to the beginning of this quadrant and move out. But you essentially move to whichever ring you decide you want to be in, do your movement, then go through the round of attacks again, like I showed you, and then finally the search round, picking up more stuff and modifying your ship. And you'll do this for 6 rounds. At the end of the game, the player who best managed to circle around the Earth, do their orbits, and get 5 points per orbit, the player who best attacked other players and got 3 points per successful hit, and of course, the player who managed to get the most space junk and get the most points from that will be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is Space Junk by Lamplight Games, a game for 2 to 6 players in which you can build up your own spaceship from junk and use it to orbit around the planet, attack other players, or just collect more stuff in order to get victory points. The game is pretty easy to learn, pretty easy to play. It's simply move, attack, search, and those are the same things as your statistics. So it's going to be very easy to teach to other players, all the way from ages 6 to ages 99, which is what they're going to say in the box. So if you like stuff that's really easy to get to the table and really easy to learn, this is going to be a great game for you. The game has a ton of variety in the cards. There's things like Christmas trees and armadillos and revolvers and trebuchets and all kinds of stuff you can use to modify your ship. Some of it will be good for attacking, like a trebuchet. Some of it, probably not as much, maybe a Christmas tree. But you can have a unique combination of stuff in your ship that makes it unique to your own play. Now there is one more phase that I didn't really go over, and that phase is where you're supposed to act like your character in the game. So if you're, Kit Vicious, you're supposed to act like a race car driver. You stop at the end of your turn after you've done your search, and you're going to personify your person. You're going to talk about the junk you added to your ship, and you're going to all around have a good time with it, adding that storytelling aspect to the game. But overall, there's a good variety of characters. There's a good variety of stuff that you can do in terms of in order to get victory points. There's a good amount of cards that you're going to give you variety in what you can play for your different parts of your spaceship. If that sounds good to you, check them out on Kickstarter. I know they're looking for your pledges and would appreciate your support.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.